He did it again. Penn State had the perfect chance to finally change the narrative. For years, James Franklin has been the guy who builds good teams, racks up 9 or 10 wins, and recruits at an elite level, but when the spotlight shines the brightest, Penn State almost always comes up short. This was supposed to be different. The roster was stacked with veterans, the wide receiver room was deeper than it's been in years, and the schedule handed Franklin a gift, a chance to prove himself in front of a home, whiteout crowd, against an Oregon team that, while talented, was young, inexperienced, and walking into one of the toughest atmospheres in all of college football. Everything pointed to this being the moment. If there was ever a night for Franklin to silence the critics, it was this one. And yet, when the dust settled, it was the same old story. Another high-stakes opportunity, another missed chance. Another night where Penn State fans were left shaking their heads, asking how it slipped away again. Instead of breaking through, Franklin let the perfect setup turn into another chapter of frustration. And if he couldn't win this game, with this team, in this situation, then you have to wonder, will he ever get Penn State over the hump? So how, if you're James Franklin, can you possibly manage to lose this game again? Everything was lined up for Penn State. You had a roster loaded with returning talent, an improved group of receivers, and a veteran team that was supposed to be ready for the moment. You were facing a quarterback who had never played in an atmosphere like this before, and it wasn't just any home game. It was the whiteout, the biggest stage in college football. The crowd was electric, the energy was there, and all the ingredients were in place for Franklin to finally flip the script. The players had felt the sting of these kinds of losses last year, and the hope was that this time they'd be ready to take that next step. And Franklin himself, he's had chance after chance, year after year, to learn from mistakes and figure out how to finally win one of these games. If there was ever a setup for him to do it, this was it. And yet, here we are again. Another big stage, another big chance, and another big loss. Penn State and Oregon were locked in a 3-3 slugfest where both teams had opportunities to seize control. Penn State squandered theirs, Oregon capitalized, and suddenly it was 17-3 Ducks. The Nittany Lions looked finished, with Oregon carrying all the momentum. But credit where it's due, Penn State fought back. With their season on the line, they clawed their way to a late rally, storming back to tie the game at 17 and send it to overtime. The crowd came alive, the momentum swung back, and when Penn State punched in a touchdown to open overtime, it felt like the breakthrough was finally here. A 17-point swing, home field behind them, the chance to finally bury the ghosts. And then, in the blink of an eye, it all unraveled. A 4th-and-1 conversion, a Ducks touchdown, another in double overtime, and finally a crushing interception to seal it. 4 plays and it was over. All that fight, all that momentum, gone just like that. I'm sure Penn State fans saw it coming, because history has trained them to, but this one had to sting more than most. This wasn't just another loss, this was the opportunity, the whiteout, the perfect setup, and Franklin still couldn't deliver. While firing him outright might feel like an overreaction given everything he's built, you can understand why the frustration is boiling over, because at this point, it just doesn't make sense. How does a team this talented, in this perfect situation, still find a way to fall short? To be honest, I was so convinced Penn State was finally going to break through that I had already started writing the script for a Franklin redemption story. But instead, we're left asking the same question that's been haunting Penn State for nearly a decade. If James Franklin can't win with a team like this, in a moment like this, will he ever win the big one? And sure, he'll get more opportunities this season, but after watching this game, how can anyone realistically expect the outcome to be any different? If this was just a standalone game, it wouldn't be a big deal. Oregon is a good team. Penn State battled the number 6 team in the country in an overtime thriller. Usually, that wouldn't be all that much to complain about. It's just Franklin's track record with Penn State that makes this so disappointing. You're probably wondering, just how bad has Penn State been in big games? We all hear people say, they never win when it matters, but sometimes that feels like an exaggeration. Surely it can't be that bad, right? Well, the truth is, it's every bit as bad as people say, maybe even worse. Against top 10 opponents, Penn State under James Franklin is a miserable 4-21 now after the loss. That's not just a losing record, That's the kind of number that defines a program's ceiling. And when you dig deeper, it looks even uglier. One of those wins was over Boise State, a team that barely counted as a true top 10 opponent, since they weren't even from a Power 4 conference. Another was Utah in a bowl game that, while nice, didn't carry the same weight as a playoff or season-defining clash. Strip those away, and the only meaningful top 10 wins Franklin has delivered came way back in 2016. That was nearly a decade ago. Since then, nothing but heartbreak and missed opportunities. And it's not just the very top opponents either. Franklin's overall record of 104-43 looks impressive on the surface, but zoom in on games against any ranked teams, and suddenly you're looking at just 15-29. For a program with Penn State's history, resources, and talent level, that's flat out unacceptable. So when people say James Franklin can't win the big one, it's not just a narrative, it's reality. The numbers don't lie, and they paint a picture of a coach who has consistently fallen short when it matters most. So is it really time to fire James Franklin? In the heat of the moment, I know a lot of Penn State fans are screaming yes, but when you take a step back, the answer is probably not that simple. Franklin has done a lot of good in Happy Valley. He's made Penn State a consistent contender. He's recruited at a top 10 level, and most years they're in the mix for a New Year's Six Bowl. That's a level of success that most programs around the country would kill for. But then there's the other side of the argument. The uncomfortable question Penn State fans can't avoid anymore. Look at what happened to Georgia. Mark Richt had them winning 9-10 games a year for 15 seasons. They were good. At times they were really good, but they could never get over the hump, and it felt like there was a hard ceiling with him as coach. Georgia finally made the painful choice to move on, gambling on an unproven assistant in Kirby Smart. The rest is history. 2 national championships, constant playoff runs, and a new standard of dominance. That's the devil on the shoulder for Penn State fans right now, because while Franklin has been good, he's also been stuck in the same middle ground Richt lived in. Good enough to stay relevant, but never great enough to win it all. And the longer this goes on, the more you have to ask, is this just who Franklin is? Is Penn State destined to be the program that's always close but never quite there? The catch, of course, is this. How many schools actually fire a good coach and replace him with a Kirby Smart? For every Georgia story, there are a dozen programs who gamble big and wind up worse. That's the risk Penn State faces. Do you accept the stability Franklin provides, or do you roll the dice and swing for the fences, knowing that if you miss, you could tumble backwards fast? And that's what makes the conversation so tough. Every season Franklin fails in a big moment, the question grows louder. Is sticking with him safe, or is it holding Penn State back from ever reaching their true ceiling? At some point, Penn State fans have to ask themselves the hardest question in college football. Is this as good as it gets? Because that's the cruelest part of nights like this. It's not that Franklin is failing to build a good program, it's that he's built a really good one, but one that seems permanently stuck just below greatness. 9 wins, 10 wins, an occasional 11, big bowl appearances, star recruits. On paper it all looks like progress, but when it comes to the moments that truly define programs, the whiteout, the playoff push, the chance to topple a top 10 rival, the ending is always the same. And that's where the frustration becomes unbearable. Penn State has the resources, the fan base, the recruiting base, the tradition, everything you'd want for a program capable of competing with Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, but for nearly a decade under Franklin, the ceiling has stayed the same. Every big chance has ended with heartbreak. Every new season feels like deja vu. So what now? Does Penn State continue to settle for good enough, hoping that one year Franklin finally stumbles into a breakthrough? Or do they take the leap into the unknown, risking stability for the possibility of greatness? Because that's the crossroads they're staring down. James Franklin has given Penn State stability, consistency, and relevance, but he hasn't given them the one thing they crave most, a defining win. A playoff run where it feels like they actually could win it all. A moment that puts them shoulder to shoulder with the elite. And until that happens, the narrative won't change. Nights like this one will add to the chorus. Penn State didn't just lose a football game against Oregon. They lost another chance to change who they are under James Franklin. Maybe James Franklin will manage to change the narrative. Or maybe, just maybe, we're starting to see the truth. That with Franklin, this might always be the story.